Welcome to the homestead. Glad you're watching. Well, I am going to be working on trenches today. And so, kind of simultaneously with Lee, he's using the tractor, I'm using a rake, and I don't know if this video is going to be together or apart, but that's my job today. I know, we should have been doing it a long time ago, but we are getting closer and closer to being finished, and it's getting exciting. And then once it's finished, we'll start hooking things up. And that will be very exciting. Anyway, got a lot of work today. Let's move it. Okay, well, I got to talking to Lee, and we got to discussing how it is that we have so much excess dirt. And then it dawned on me, during the summertime when it's really, really hot and the ground is really, really dry, it cracks. And sometimes the cracks are really big and really deep. And so if the ground dries up and shrinks, then it's a big possibility the reason why we can't get it back in the same place is we pulled it out when it was dry, then it rained and it swelled up, and now we have too much dirt to go back in the holes. And as the ground dries out, which won't be for probably a long time, but as it dries out, that's when we're going to start to see the dips. We were thinking wet it and it would dip. But maybe that's not true here. Maybe what is true is when it gets wet, it swells, and when it dries out, it shrinks. And That's why we have so much excess dirt, because we pulled the dry dirt out. See, now this makes sense. I don't know if it's true, but it makes sense. And so that's got to be why we've got so much dirt left over, because we've been moving dirt everywhere. Anyway, speaking of excess dirt, right here are some really big ridges and stuff from when we had that septic tank done, and the lawnmower really bounces when you go across this. And so I'm going to weed eat it out of the way, and then we can see how much dirt we need to put over there to stop the ridges. So let's do that. come help me? Okay, it's a good time to take a break. Looks like my battery's dying anyway, and looks like I should get something to drink and get me some lunch, and I'll be right back, and we'll finish up this area right here. It's going okay, so don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. I need a break. I've gotten a lot done, and there's a lot more still yet to do, but we're almost to the end. And so let me clean my glasses, take a break, get something to drink, rest from my weary body for a minute, and I'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. Okay, I'm back, but I don't have a lot of energy. My eyes are kind of burning too, so must be all that sweat that kept falling in them. Anyway, back to work I go. I hope you're still with me. Okay, I'm not gonna fight the cat. I'm just gonna quit for today. Wait till they're napping tomorrow and finish this corner up. I still have the rest of this one and the rest of that one there. It's not a lot, but It is still quite a bit, so I'm done for today. And I sure appreciate you sticking with me to the end. God bless you all. Thank you to all our new subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. It will help us out. But not only that, if you could click into us every day and let it show that more people are watching our videos. We're really trying to push this channel. It will help our retirement later. Right now it does nothing for us except give us enjoyment to bring this to you, and your comments, that brings us enjoyment as well. Thank you all for watching. God bless you. Be sure to like, share, press the notification bell, subscribe, comment if you will, and we will see you next time on the Homestead. Bye-bye now.